Elisa, good morning, I should say to you. You're 10 a.m. Saturday morning. I'm 5 o'clock Friday night.
Oh, yes, I'm in the future.
Appreciate you joining us. So, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what you've been up to over the last couple of years?
Right. So my name is Elisa Di Napoli. I am originally from Italy, but I've been living all over the place in the world. And my two passions in life are music and psychology, personal development. And they're very much intertwined. So I am a musician, singer, songwriter, but I'm also a hypnotherapist and a life coach. And I basically, the last few years have been all about helping people specifically with performance anxiety issues, because that's something that I really suffered pretty badly from. And after many, many years, I found a way to um, resolve this problem. And so just I have been focusing on helping other people do the same.
Mm. Well, take me back. So, how did you become a musician? How did you decide this was your career path? That's a career path that kids say when they're young, and then they go, well, I grow up and I grow out of that phase and I go into the business world. How did you decide to become musician, and what took you down that path?
Well, so for me, it's all started with actually poetry when I was a kid. Well, one side was poetry because I used to write a lot of poetry and write short stories. But also, I was when I was as young as 6 years old, I was completely obsessed with, like all kids with cartoons. But in Italy, we have cartoons that have a song at the beginning of it and at the end of it. And
Mm.
so I basically, like with my little tape recorder machine, recorded all the songs and decided to like study them because one day I would be a cartoon songwriter. That's what I wanted to be. And so that was pretty early in life. And then I started learning piano and guitar
Mm.
later on. And another thing that really inspired me was a school concert where there was this guy playing Baby I'm Gonna Leave You by Led Zeppelin. And it was just so
Mm.
amazing that I was like, I want to do that, and
Mm.
really into it. So it was a passion for me to really not just sing other people's songs, but actually write my own songs. So from a very young age, I did that. But actually, and psychology was very much part of my world as well. I tried to read in the interpretation of dreams by Freud when I was like 16. I didn't understand anything, of course. Uh,
That's pretty
so
heavy to be reading at 16.
yeah, yeah, I was a bookish girl. It was all about studying, and I still love learning, and I'm a bit of a fan of courses. That's all I seem to be doing
Mm.
um, these days as well.
So in Italy, what was the culture like around telling your parents you want to become a musician? Were they pretty supportive, or because in the United States, if you tell your parents that you want to be a musician, they'd be like, "Cool, like still study business, get your business degree, and then we'll see about music."
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to say, my parents are quite, um, well, they're also quite different in the sense that, if you can imagine, they lived in Italy until they were 50, and then they decided to move to New Zealand when they were 50, not
Mm.
even like speaking English that well, and it was just a bit radical, so they're pretty, different that way. And I said to them, well, if you're going to New Zealand, I'm going to go to Scotland, and I'm just going to do my own thing, and there's
Mm.
nothing you can do about it. So I kind of prepare them from that young age that I would just leave, and I would do what I wanted. But of course, I was also a very academic person. So yes, I wanted to be a musician, but I also did study as well. Went to uni and I studied philosophy and all kinds of subjects. So actually, I think they thought I was going to become an academic or some kind of teacher.
Mm.
And when it came to it, I couldn't really. at the time make any money with music at all. I would, so it wasn't a job, but I did it all the time. Uh, and really what I did is I opened a business pretty young, and I became a hypnotherapist at age of 25, which was very strange at the time, now that I think about it. Um, so
I
it's
have
been going on, I've been both throughout since then.
We're definitely going to talk about hypnotherapy because you said that was strange at the time. I think, to be honest, most people would still regard it as a little bit strange, maybe a little more mainstream now. Um, but you begin to play music and performance anxiety because I know that's a big part of what you coach. That's probably your primary area. What were you experiencing when you were about to get on stage that led you to this thought process? Ooh, this is maybe something other people are running into.
Yeah, I would have, the problem would start even days before. I would start worrying about it and imagining, always having these thoughts that kind of interfered and intruded with my practice. And it was always about being judged as not being good enough, or, people being disappointed and that kind of thing. So it would lead me to practice a lot, and then I would start hating this because it was too much, it wasn't enjoyable anymore, and I was like, no, I have to practice more because I'm just not perfect yet, and da, da, da. And
Mm,
then I would go into the on stage, and I would have a terrible time, like if I actually even made it on stage, because sometimes I would lose my voice, I'd get sick, just the day before or the same day, mysteriously sick. And I was actually sick, and I did lose my voice, but I think this was a subconscious thing, like a
mm.
psychosomatic result. But I would, push through most of the time. I wanted to get better at it, except I didn't really get better at it. For a long time, I got worse at it because I just kept on repeating the same negative experience. And then I would get on stage, and in the best case scenario, I would, go through the performance, but not really feeling it. I wouldn't really enjoy it, and I'd be always on edge, looking at the audience. Oh, are they enjoying it? Are they enjoying it? And if someone got up and went to the bathroom, I'd be like, oh, that's it, that's it. I'm just not good
Mm.
enough. They think I'm crap, like complete insanity. And then afterwards as well, I would apologize. If somebody came to me after the show and said, "Oh, that was good," I'd be like, "No, no, no, I made a lot of mistakes. That was terrible. I'm so sorry." Like,
Yep.
it's just not a good way to be. Uh, so yeah, that's only a few of the. And the other thing that would happen to me as well is that, um, and this is one of the reasons why at some point I almost decided to give up, was I had a performance in which I kept on thinking, oh, what if I forget my words? What if I forget my chords? What if I forget what if, and of course that's a suggestion. And in the middle of it, I forgot chords, words, everything. I
Mm.
was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I had to like get out of the theater in the middle of the performance, completely humiliated, thinking, okay, this is obviously not for me.
Mm. Before we had this conversation, I would have said that this is not something I personally have experienced because I've done a lot of speaking in my life, and I think I'm decent at it. I can hold my own. I know that's like a big source of fear for a lot of people. Like I've given plenty of best man speeches. I've gone back. I'm spoken at my university. I've done a bunch of podcasts, mine and others, and I never really got
Yeah.
nervous speaking. That wasn't one of the things I got nervous doing. But when you started talking, instantly a light just went off in my head. I said, "Oh, I've had this before." When I was in high
Uh-huh.
school, I got this same amount of fear and anxiety going into track meets. So I was a soccer player. I loved playing soccer. I had so much fun. Like I would always be excited for soccer games. But I was a good track athlete too. I was actually the champion in the mile back to back years in my conference. But the exact same thing would happen to me. Like 5 days from the meet, pressure would start to build. And I would get like this feeling in my chest, in my stomach. I would get like sick to my stomach. And then it would just get worse and worse and worse and worse until like the gun is about to go off before the race. And I would just be like ready to sort of like explode. Like, oh, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this.
Yes.
Once I got into the race, though, my mind kind of just shut up and it was like, just run as hard and fast as you can. But
Yeah.
I probably was a better track athlete than I was soccer player in a lot of ways, shape, and form. And I had no desire to continue doing track and field at the higher levels. I could have probably gotten a
Right.
scholarship to do track, but I hated that and wanted no part of that anxiety ridden feeling that I had. So I don't know if you work with athletes, but that's my experience with this exact feeling. So I know precisely what you're talking about. That just feeling in your gut, like, oh, there's something wrong, and I would skip a
Yeah.
lot of track meets because of that.
Right. Well, the performance anxiety is not just to do with music, you know. You could have performance anxiety on a podcast. You could have performance anxiety speaking at a conference, in an audition, in an interview, and like you mentioned in sports, you know, in competitive sports. It's anything where you are vulnerable to judgment, I guess, because the
Mm.
main thing about it is the fear of rejection, you know, and the fear of rejection is it's a really a fear we have evolutionarily speaking. It makes sense because when we lived in tribes, if you know, were not in the tribe, you were expelled. That potentially could be death, could mean death, you know. And so our brains haven't evolved to change that. Our brains is pretty much the same as well, you know, obviously not from the beginning of times, because our brains have evolved, but you know, we haven't really evolved to change this particular aspect. Because basically what happens is that we get into fight or flight when
Mm.
we are in that situation that we think is dangerous. Um,
Mm. Do you think more of that pressure that is being stewed on at the individual level is coming from outside or inside? Do you think it's more so the person perceiving that pressure, or actually they are getting some pressure from the outside? Because I feel like for me in track and field, that pressure was all in my head. Like everyone knew I was pretty good, and if I went out and had a bad race, no one really would care that much.
yeah, I would say yes, the pressure is mainly personal, come from the inside. Of course, you know, there are certain circumstances, like, for example, if you're doing an audition as an actor or a dancer or any kind of audition, well, yeah, there is a little bit of pressure. I guess it's not the same though as, you know, an exam. So in an exam, there would be also external pressure. But really, at the end of the day, unless you have particularly, you know, unless you have something like, for example, like a competition, say you are ice skaters, you know, and you're given a grade at the end of your performance, you know, that's pretty high stakes. So it's external as well as internal. But at the end of the day, you know, I think everyone really wants to see you shine. You know, like what people want is they want to, the people that are assisting, they're watching a performance, whatever the performance is, whatever kind it is, they want to have fun, right? They're there because they want to have to what they want to learn something, or they want to watch something that they could never do, and they want to feel something that they in their everyday life it's less accessible. So they want you to do well, because if you don't, then they won't have fun either.
So, what would you say to someone who indicates that they feel like that anxiety is a beneficial thing for them, right? Because you don't want to have no anxiety. You don't have 0% anxiety. Like if I had no anxiety coming into
Yeah.
this podcast, I wouldn't prepare. I'm great at this. I'm going to knock it out of the park, right? I'd probably be better
Yeah.
suited to have like 5 to 10% anxiety. How do you think about that?
Well, I think that you cannot get rid of all anxiety, and as you said, it's not advisable to do so anyway, and it's not possible most
Mm.
of the time. So I would say yes, that anxiety is actually necessary as long as it's, as you say, 5-10%. It's no more than that. It's enough to get you present, to be present 100%, and you're not be in your head thinking about what you're gonna have for dinner or whatever. Like you are here. So if you don't have any anxiety, then the performance is going to be pretty strange. So to give you an example, one of the things that I tried back, you know, when all of this started, I tried to take beta blockers
Mm.
because the doctor said to me, oh, you know, you just take the beta blockers. So I
Is
did
that is
that.
that kind of
And
popular with
yes,
musicians?
I have met a few that take it. I don't know if it's popular. I don't think so. I wouldn't think so. But, if you're in a really, it's one of the things you could do. And it does work. However, what it did for me is it made me feel really dissociated, like I'm not even there. I'm just going through the motions. There is no, I don't care. And so therefore everything, it's like watching yourself playing the instrument or singing or whatever it is you're doing. It's kind of like you are distanced.
Mm,
So it wasn't very enjoyable. Certainly it was better than being riddled with crazy anxiety, but it also wasn't very good for me or the audience.
interesting. So you talked a little bit about our reason we have this anxiety, but can you just go into that a little bit deeper? Because it feels to me like it would be a lot easier if I had almost no performance anxiety and I could just go out and do the thing that I practiced and I could be a little more
Yeah.
free flowing and playful with things.
Well, so having said what we said, that which is that basically a little bit of anxiety is normal. When you have a lot of anxiety, well, this comes from it comes from a bunch of different places, and I'd like to explore two of them that are very important. So one is negative conditioning. So negative conditioning is when you've had a bad experience and that has to do with performing. And this experience has been tagged, so to speak, by your amygdala, which is the alarm center of the brain, as dangerous. So that now, every time that you are in a similar situation, your amygdala alarm goes on and says, okay, this is danger, danger. So then you start having a panic attack or an anxiety response, basically the fight or flight response. So that's one reason. The other one is if you spend a lot of time doing what as hypnotherapists is called negative mental rehearsal. Really, basically, what it is worrying and ruminating. So,
Mm.
imagining things going badly, imagining the worst case scenario, being humiliated, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you put these two together, then you get bingo, like a very big, very problematic situation where you have high performance anxiety. There's also another part to this, but this is, I would say, this can happen to anyone, even if they don't engage in worrying and rumination and negative mental rehearsal, even if they haven't had a negative experience. And this is when you have a lot of practice on your instruments. This is specifically for musicians. If they have had a lot of practice on the instrument, but they haven't had practice performing. So then basically their memory kind of disappears on the day because under duress and under stress, you will not be able to perform the same way if you haven't had practice performing, if that makes sense, like a positive performance practice, which can be done in person or can be done via hypnosis. It's basically called positive mental rehearsal, and it's part of the cognitive behavior hypnotherapy. You can use this sort of simulation in your head to imagine what it would be like. And so it's kind of like priming yourself to actually have a good time,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
So you talk about that negative conditioning. So that would essentially be like a traumatic event almost in your brain that you've been scarred at some capacity because you maybe did this performance once and it didn't go that well. Am I reasonable in making that kind of leap?
Yeah. Yeah, you are. I mean, I don't know if I would call it trauma, but for some people, definitely it would be. And even if it isn't, it doesn't really matter. And even if it looks like something really small, it doesn't really matter. So, for example, with me, I had a few of these incidents when I was younger. One was when I was 11 and I was doing my first piano recital, and basically I hadn't practiced for performance at all. The method was, it was a Suzuki method, which is not very good in terms of performing because it's all about memorization. Anyway, I had
Mm,
this recital and it went really badly because basically I forgot the entire thing. Like I just kind of panicked and
mm,
couldn't remember anything anymore, right? So that kind of thing is can be very, especially at that age, can have a very detrimental effect. It can be sort of traumatic.
mm. I actually kind of wonder if I had the opposite effect where I did a track and field event when I was a kid. I was
Yeah,
probably in second grade, second or third grade, and we had this like field day, and I think I would have had to have been in second grade, and we were competing against the grade higher than us. So they would like pair grades together. And I was competing against a
right.
grade higher than us. And it was a 400-meter run, which is like a long way to run for a little kid. And I ended up getting second place. And I only lost to one kid that was a year ahead of me. And everyone was like, this is amazing. Like, this is so cool that you did this. So I think I almost had like a pressure reinforcing response that everyone's like, you're good at this. Like, oh, so now I need to go out and perform
Yeah, yeah,
well. And if I don't go out and perform well, then something was wrong with me. Like now they have expectations on me to do a good job.
yeah,
So I guess you don't even necessarily have to have a
yeah.
bad performance. Potentially, even a good performance could cause this.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Absolutely. It's the expectations. And overachievers often they do that, they think, oh, I need to be perfect. Either because they're afraid of disappointing their parents or whoever had these expectations for them, or because, they've actually had a negative experience. It doesn't really matter, but basically whenever you have that inner voice while you are like that self-conscious voice thoughts pretty much when you are performing, they will interfere with the actual message that you're trying to get across.
Mm. So the other thing you said you see often is that negative rehearsal, where people will play out negative situations in their mind. How do you think people begin that process? Because nobody wants to imagine bad things are going to happen, but I guess that it sort of just spirals for them.
Well, how, so the question is how the negative mental rehearsal happens? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the negative mental rehearsal is pretty much, like I said, worrying, right? That's what we do when we worry. We worry about, worrying means, we're thinking about a negative experience, or we're thinking about the worst case scenario, what ifing. I call it also what ifing. What if this happens? What if that happens? And then the moment you start saying this to yourself, your brain will create images. Whenever you say something, oh, I don't want to, for example, you say, oh, I don't want to feel nervous. I don't want to make a fool out of myself. I don't want to feel, all this, I don't want to. But what happens actually is that your brain, registers the words that are connected to an image. So, um, if you're saying, I don't want to make a fool out of myself, what does that mean? Oh, maybe it's different from everyone, but for me, maybe it's, I don't know, having a bum note, or getting onto the stage, tripping, whatever it may be. Your brain is very much always making up images to that respond to your words. However, things like not, like I don't want, I don't, it's not really an image. It doesn't produce an image. So then you are stuck with actually the very thing that you don't want. So
Hmm.
to give you an example, if I said to you, oh, don't think of don't think of an ambulance on top of a hill on fire, what did you just imagine?
The first thing I thought of was an ambulance on fire, and then I went, "No, don't do that. Don't think
Yeah,
about that."
yeah, exactly. But you can't stop. You will imagine it, even if you don't want to, because, like I said, don't is not an object, so your brain can't imagine that.
Interesting. So, what are the techniques that you use to get people out of that negative rehearsal? There's nothing we can do to undo something that happened to you in your past, right? But I presume what we're trying to do is tone down our response to that.
Well, yes and no. Like there are things you can do to, as you say, change the response to experiences that remind you of that one, of the triggering one. There are things that we can do, such as inner child work, such as trauma work. So trauma work is there's different kinds of trauma work, different ways, and definitely using in hypnotherapy with those ways has been very positive with my clients anyway. And so of course you can't change what happened, but you definitely can change how you feel about it. And therefore, it's almost like you can untag, like the tag that was attached to that event as dangerous is now being removed, so that now when you think about it, it doesn't feel like a traumatic event anymore. You're not triggered again. You just kind of think of it as a story, something that happened to you. It wasn't great, but it's also not really affecting you today. So that's one thing. On the other, so that needs to be looked at immediately. And then we also want to use positive mental rehearsal. So basically, what is it that you want to feel? And if the person doesn't know because, maybe they've never had that feeling, then we need to model it. We need to imagine it, tell them what it is. Talking and walking and sounding and moving like someone who's confident, like someone who actually really enjoys performing. But you need to model it for your client. This is something that is much easier if you are helping someone else. If you're doing it for yourself, it also can work, but you need to have a clear idea of what you're trying to suggest. So what does it mean to have a positive mental rehearsal? Okay, well, imagine that you are walking on stage in the like someone who is confident would. What would it be like to do that? And imagine that, and then the third thing is, so these two things very much help, but actually, like there's one thing that is very important that you can do, even kind of before all of this, to help yourself before a performance. And that is, there's so when if you're already panicking, right? If you're already starting to imagine things going wrong and that response is being triggered, the fight or flight, in that moment, there is nothing you're going to be able to do until the fight or flight is switched off. The fight or flight response is switched off. So at that stage, the most important thing is to calm your body, calming your sympathetic nervous system. And there are a couple of things, very simple things that actually you can do to switch on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of the sympathetic. So basically it means you cannot have a panic attack while you're actually sleeping and relaxing. It can't happen. Either one or the other needs to be on. So one easy way to switch off the sympathetic nervous system is to switch on the parasympathetic. And the two ways that you can do that are, first of all, aerobic exercise. So you actually, anything that gets your heart pumping and you gets your heart rate up. So it could be jumping jacks, dancing about, going up and down the stairs, it doesn't matter. But something that really gets that, well, basically it tells your amygdala, tells the alarm center, oh, there is a danger and we're fighting with the enemy. We are running away, whatever it is, we are simulating that actual response so that the cortisol and the adrenaline that are in the body, they can actually get flushed out of the body as if we were really fighting an enemy, right? So that's the first thing that needs to happen. And then the other thing, once that's done, then the other thing you can do is use diaphragmatic breathing, which basically means you're breathing in through your nose, you're breathing out through your nose. That's really important, not through your mouth. and you're making sure the out breath is much longer than the in breath, and you do that for 5 minutes. So if you do these two things, then you're calm enough to get on stage and actually be okay.
5 minutes is a lot of breathing.
I know.
Yeah. So is that sort of what your routine looks like then now at this point, or have you kind of
Yeah,
just
for
gotten over
sure.
it?
I mean, well, so this my story is kind of funny in the sense that I went through a whole so many sessions of hypnotherapy, and also so including positive mental rehearsal, including working with the past and all of that. And then actually I started really enjoying my performances,
Hmm.
and and it wasn't a problem anymore, right? It got to a stage where I actually wouldn't get that much really nervous. But then, unfortunately, the pandemic happened, so I couldn't perform anymore for 2 years. So when I started again, I kind of regressed. And so I had to go through it again. I had to like start again, not from the very beginning, but I definitely, my anxiety had become worse.
You're out of
So I had to
practice.
go through, yeah, out of practice. Yeah.
Mm. So let's talk about hypnotherapy because you brought it up a couple of times. So you said that as a job, you became trained in hypnotherapy. What did the training
Oh,
look
yes.
like? And how did you decide, oh, I'm going to go into hypnotherapy?
That's a good question. It's got a bit of a story. So when I was studying university, I studied philosophy, Western philosophy. Then I went on to Eastern philosophy, and from Eastern philosophy, I got on to comparative religion. And so it's different from theology. It's got nothing to do with theology. It's more like comparing religions from different parts of the world. And the thing that really interested me was mysticism and altered states of consciousness. So at the moment, like you may be aware that in some places in the world, for example, they started using things like MDMA to help with therapy.
Mhm.
But when I got onto this, it was more than 25 years ago, and it was just at the beginning, and it was a bit of a controversial uh, topic or subject. So I studied it a little bit, and I came across shamanism,
Mm.
which is basically like the oldest sort of not really religion, because it's not really a religion, but it's let's say that it's kind of like a religion. So it's a way of looking at the world and understanding the world. And that was very fascinating to me because it is very different from kind of monotheistic religions and things like that. It's very, without going into it, what I found was that hypnotherapy is kind of a modern day shamanism, but without the supernatural element,
Mm.
right? There is no magic to it or anything like that, but it's about going into a altered state of consciousness, a little bit like meditation. It's very similar to meditation, and I would argue actually that it's the same state, except there's different depths, and except that you induce it differently and you use it differently. But the state in itself, I would argue that is actually very, very similar, if not the same.
Mm.
So basically that's how I became a hypnotherapist. I decided that I didn't want to be an academic, and that because it would have been a uphill battle. So I decided to do this because it was modern day shamanism without the supernatural element, and I wanted um, to see if it would work for me, and it did.
Did you initially approach that with quite a bit of skepticism, like hypnotherapy? Like, because I know very little about hypnotherapy, but my kind of like bullshit detector sort of starts to go off like, I don't know about
Mhm.
that.
Well, actually, I experienced it before I went training.
Mm.
I went on my training. I experienced it, and it was very powerful because at the time I had really bad headaches. That I had pretty much, there was a whole year I had a headache all year long. like every day, and it
Mm.
was awful. I was very much, I mean, I was young, so I kind of, when you're young, you can stand a lot of things more than when you're older. But
Yeah.
at some point, I was, close to, just giving up, on my life and thinking, I don't want to live like this. I'm in pain all the time.
Mm.
So one of the things that I tried was hypnotherapy, and it actually worked. It actually worked, and I was like, oh, okay, like nothing else works. I mean, even painkillers don't do anything. It just keeps on happening, and it worked because I understood what was happening. It was like basically I was stressing myself out constantly every day, and my stress was coming from, a thought. I had a thought that, the typical thoughts that young people sometimes have, the idealistic, I want to change the world, and I was like, oh yes, I need to change this world. And I, of course, couldn't, because I'm just one person, I'm not a god or anything. But it stressed me out so much because I spent all the time thinking, how can I do this? How can I do it? I have to find a way. And it was stress me. And then I get tense. My neck muscles and my shoulders would go up, and it would all contract and give me this like massive headache. So it took, first, I needed to understand the cause. And the cause was this thought, and I needed to like change this thought. And then the second thing is I needed to learn how to relax. And it took some time. So it didn't just go immediately, but it was like, okay, every day I'm having a headache. Okay, now I'm having a headache, 6 times a week. Now I'm having a headache 5 times a week, and then four, and then three, and then two, and then one, and then, once every few months. So,
So you approached
um,
hypnotism almost from a sense of like desperation. I've tried all these other things, they didn't work, and
yeah,
might as well give this
yeah,
a whirl. What
yeah.
what
And
did
a lot
that
of people do that.
what did that actual process look like? So you're going into someone's office, there's one hypnotherapist. What are they doing essentially?
Yeah, well, it depends, to be honest, on the hypnotherapist, because unfortunately, in this profession, there are amazing people who really, really help others to a degree that you wouldn't believe. But there's also other people who are not very good, and they're just not, maybe they're not experienced enough, maybe their training wasn't quite, that great. Unfortunately, it's one of those professions that is not regulated much. I mean, there are regulations in certain countries, and you can, for example, like in the UK, there's the National Council for Hypnotherapists, and you can't just become a member if saying, "Oh, I've done an online course." You can't do that. You have to actually demonstrate that you know what you're doing, and
Mm.
so that's one thing that I would say is that if a client, a person wants to find a hypnotherapist, they could check, that they are a member of an organization like that with some standards.
Mm.
So, having said that, let's say that you go, if you came and see me, I have a very thorough process. So, one of the things that really annoys me is that if, for example, in the past, I've gone to see another hypnotherapist, and they have not even had like an hour with me to talk about the issue that I'm presenting, and they're just kind of asking one random question like, oh, what would you like to achieve? And then you give them, one sentence, and then boom, they go into the hypnotherapy. That is not a good way of working, because it's not that simple.
Mm.
The way to do it is, in my opinion, of course, is to have a consultation where I'm kind of investigating like a psychologist would, and go, okay, what is the issue? And we flesh it out. I ask a lot of questions. And then after that, there would be a few sessions, often 4 sessions, depends, on the issue, but 4 to 5 sessions is kind of the average, because change takes repetition. You have to look at things from different angles. There's different processes, which are, different things you can do in the state of hypnosis. At the end of the day, hypnosis is just a state. It's an optimal learning state. So if you just get hypnotized, but you don't do anything with it, nothing's going to change. So it's not just inducing the trance. You actually have to do something. You have to know what to do, how to intervene once you have established it.
Interesting. And I think to your point about there being good practitioners and bad practitioners, I mean, that's basically every field. And
Yes.
your diagnosis there, when you were with that other therapist, that sounds like every doctor's office I walk into. What's going on? My ankle hurts. Okay, let me feel around. Well, what you have is you have X, and you're like, bro, we were in an office. We didn't go run. We didn't jog. We didn't jump. We didn't do anything. Like, how do you know that? And you can go to the next person and then tell you they told you that. Nah, that's not right. There's a lot of that in the world. So maybe just tell us like what hypnotherapy is and what it's not, because I think there's probably a popular conception about what it actually is. There's a person with a watch. That's what I think of. Person with a watch, and they make you fall asleep, and then I don't know, do a parlor trick from there. It's hard to really know where it's applicable and where it's not applicable.
Yeah, so hypnotherapy, okay, let's talk about hypnosis first of all, right? What is hypnosis? What is not hypnosis? So the hypnosis is pretty much, like I said, an optimal learning state that you actually enter. We all enter every single day. We enter it naturally. For example, when we are falling asleep, that's called the hypnopompic state. It basically means you are not quite asleep, but you're also not awake. You are aware that you are not asleep and also not absolutely awake, because your eyes are closed and your senses are starting to focus inward instead of outwards. So you might start getting images in your mind. You might start having thoughts and the beginning of dreams in your mind, but you are aware that that's happening. It's not like you're just dreaming and are not aware. So that's one very, very similar state to hypnosis. Also, when you wake up, it's the same thing. Like when you've just woken up, you're in bed, you're not moving, you aren't quite awake, but you're definitely not asleep either. Maybe you're thinking about a dream or something like that. That's a hypnagogic state. Then you are in a very similar state to hypnosis when you are doing long-term running, for example, or when you're really engrossed in reading a book or watching a movie to the point that someone comes in and you maybe don't even notice them, right? So all of these, also you are in a state very similar to hypnosis when you are, let's call it a trance. It's not really a trance, but let's just call it a trance for the sake of understanding. If you are in shock, if you're highly emotional, like you've just had a really bad argument and you've been crying a lot and you're in a very suggestible place at that point. So you're emotionally. So all of these are kind of trance places or places where you're very highly suggestible. What hypnosis is not, it's not unconsciousness. It's not someone else telling you what to do and being under the power of somebody else. It's not a magic wand that just fixes everything. It's none of those things. It's a very, very, like another example is if you drive your car and if you've been driving your car for so long, you've been doing this kind of going down this route a lot of times, you're doing it automatically, you're not thinking, and then maybe that day you want to go somewhere else, but you are in a bit of a trance and you just forget to go in the right direction. You go in the familiar direction.
Right.
So all of that.
That makes perfect sense. Another one that I see a lot is someone will have their phone and they'll be like looking at it and texting, and you'll go, Elisa, and they'll just, oh, what? Huh? What? Like they were just so fixated on sending that text or looking at something on their phone that they just didn't even know you were attempting to talk to them. That one I see a lot. Now, that's not a good form of hypnosis or being in a trance, but that is one that is pretty obvious probably to everyone listening.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's being engrossed in whatever it is that you're doing. But of course, it's different from hypnotherapy, because in hypnotherapy, the hypnotherapist, induces the state artificially, and then does something with it. So helps you through. You go on a journey, very similar to, like, you probably know about positive visualization, mental visualization. Yeah, that's a process you can do while in hypnosis. There's a bunch of things you can do, a bunch of therapies that you can adapt to hypnotherapy. So I think a good hypnotherapist is someone who knows a lot of different, uh, has a lot of different tools, has studied a lot of different kind of ways of intervening to help a client. It's not just hypnosis. If we did an hypnosis session now with intention, no intention to work on any issue, just like, oh, let's just go into hypnosis. Well, it wouldn't do anything. All it would do is just make you feel relaxed. That's it.
Hmm. So is there sort of like science around where your brain is going during this hypnosis process? And the reason I asked this question is because we had a gentleman on, Alex Pong, and he did a lot of research on walking and how you get into this state of, it's sort of like a relaxation, sort of like that driving thing that you just discussed, where
Mm.
you're out, you're doing it, you're moving, but then you can come up with these unique ideas. And one of the best things that he said is you'll have these problems that are kind of ruminating in the back of your subconscious, and you'll have been talking to your friend about who's that actor in that movie. Yeah, I can't remember her name. And then you'll be walking, and then you just go, Cameron Diaz, and you're like, where did that come from? Like, I wasn't even thinking about this
Mhm.
problem, but somehow it just kind of came to you. So is there an understanding of where your brain is going and like what is happening during hypnosis?
Well, that's a really complicated issue, really, because
Hmm.
there's been a lot of uh, you know studies around hypnotherapy, but a lot of them have to do with evidence-based approaches to symptoms. So for example, IBS, there's actually
I see.
been loads of studies where they've seen, okay, hypnotherapy really actually works with IBS, for example, right? But in terms of like pinpointing, or where is this happening? How is this happening? Is there a part of the brain where you go, uh, there is no, it's been really impossible to demonstrate that there is such a thing as trance um, in some part of the brain. It's more like a process. It's something that, it's like thinking. Where is thinking? Thinking happens because you've got all these neural pathways firing at each other, right? So that's happening in an hypnotic state, just as it is happening when you're not in a hypnotic state. But it's not like you're going somewhere. It's like a process that happens, and you happen to be relaxed. So some things, there's talk about alpha waves, delta waves, what kind of brain waves is it associated with. But that's tricky because, there's no, there's a fluctuation. So although now, we are talking and we are awake, and there's a predominance of alpha waves, it doesn't mean that there's only alpha waves. And then when you go into a state of relaxation and internal focus, your brain waves will change, but it's not like you just go into you only have a specific, delta waves or whatever present, because it's more by predominance. So it's kind of difficult to say, oh, for sure, this is where hypnosis lives. No, it doesn't really work like that.
Is there any truth to the sentiment I've heard that only certain people can become hypnotized?
Yeah. So the okay. So there's two things. If you have a problem with attention, so for example, you might have ADHD or ADD. Actually, that makes hypnosis a lot harder, or if not impossible, for people with this problem. Not always, but it depends on how much their concentration is, how much they can concentrate, basically. Or if you have Alzheimer's, dementia, hypnosis is not going to work, because again, you need to concentrate and focus your attention. And the other oh, the word has just escaped me, but the other place in which it's not place anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you don't want to be hypnotized, so if you're like, oh no, I bet it doesn't work for me and it's never going to happen for me, and if you don't want to, you can't be hypnotized.
If you're resistant mentally.
Yeah, if you're like, no, I'm not doing this, then there's nobody that can actually force you to do it. The only kind of caveat is, I don't know if you've ever seen stage hypnotists. Sometimes stage hypnotists use kind of shock techniques. Basically, it's like they take you by surprise. However, it's important to also point out that when there is a stage show, not everyone goes on stage. The person that go on stage have been selected by the hypnotist. And how does the hypnotist select them? Well, he or she will do an exercise before the actual show starts. And this exercise is very important because it's the moment in which he or she looks at the result of the experiment and goes, okay, that person over there didn't respond, that person over there did. So very, typically, I don't know, it could be like asking them to imagine that their arm is getting lighter and lighter and that kind of thing. So if someone's arm is not lifting at all, you're not gonna pick that person. So the people that get on stage are people that actually are highly susceptible and want to be hypnotized.
I got you. So where do you think hypnotism is a practical treatment for people? Are there things that if someone would come to you and say like, whatever, I would just want to be more confident, you'd go, yeah, that's not really a fit for what I'm trying to accomplish?
No, absolutely. No, that's absolutely a fit. I mean, I do a lot of therapy. So I do life coaching and therapy. So that's basically what you would call psychotherapy, I suppose. So emotional problems of I help people with trauma, not with PTSD, because that's complex PTSD is a little bit more something that specialization. You want a specialist for that, but confidence. I mean, I've had so many different people with so many different problems, self-esteem issues and the typical stuff like, smoking and addictions. But with addictions, it depends, because it depends whether you also need support from the outside. And pretty much any personal development issue can be helped with the use of hypnosis, provided that the therapist is quite it hasn't just done only an hypnotherapy course, because the hypnotherapy course is yeah.
So it sounds like you might not necessarily say hypnotherapy is the solution for everyone. You might talk to someone and be like, hypnosis is not really applicable for what we're doing.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that's really not good for is depression, because especially like clinical depression, like if it's just something happened to me and I'm sad, that's not depression, but if it's actually clinical depression, you don't want to use hypnotherapy, because actually it can backfire. And also if you have something like not the idea, what is it called, psychosis, psychotic episodes, you're suicidal, not a good idea to use hypnosis then.
Understandable. So what does it look like for people that have performance anxiety? What is kind of I know there's no typical treatment, but maybe there's someone listening out there that has performance anxiety, whether that be speaking in public which I know is one of the most common fears that people report. Probably the most common fear where there's
Yeah.
no pending physical danger out there, right? Like, I think it's reasonable to be scared of heights. If you would fall, it would be extremely dangerous. You know, scared of spiders or snakes, like they could be dangerous, right? But public speaking doesn't really have that same physical impact on you. Um, what is going to be your course of action to help someone get over that fear of speaking, the anxiety around sport, the anxiety around performing in front of a live audience, or even just, you know, small levels of performance, performing at your job or presenting to your team, things of that nature?
Well, first of all, the first thing we need to find out is what is the negative conditioning that is present, if there is any. So the first exercise that I do is called, I like to call it hell versus opportunity. What basically it is that I would ask you after a whole consultation where I get a lot more ideas about where this coming from. If I think that this is coming from negative conditioning, and that's part of it, then this exercise will help identify what that is. So I would say to you, okay, tell me, let's write down. I want you to write down all the automatic thoughts that come to you when you think about performing, and it could be like, oh, I'm terrible at this. I'm worried that I'm gonna forget my words, whatever it is, yeah? So I would ask you to really spend some time and write them all down. And that's gonna be a very telling exercise, because in that exercise I can see these are all your limiting beliefs, pretty much, right?
Mm.
And they are core beliefs, and we need to look at them. So if there's one, for example, that basically says, I'm not good enough, I'm incompetent, you know, that kind of thing, then we need to, first of all, we need to understand where does this come from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and in that case, we need to, if it's coming from negative conditioning, to do with your childhood, for example, then we need to have an hypnosis session just on that. We
Mm.
need to actually do some inner child work, go back, uh, figure out what's happened, and pretty much is the work is about you know, rescuing in a way that inner child, rescuing, bringing it back to the present, so that it's not stuck in this situation in the past where it feels alone and frightened and all kinds of other negative feelings, you know. So that's one thing. Also, we need to change these automatic negative self-limiting beliefs into opportunities, which means imagine that, okay, you're driving a car and you've had a lot of accidents. Maybe there's like a line of accidents uh, in the past, but you wouldn't drive a car looking in the rearview mirror, would you? You wouldn't. Like in the rearview mirror, you would see all these accidents that have happened, but you can't drive a car looking in the rearview mirror because you're going to crash again,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's basically what we do when we live our lives through the rearview mirror, looking at the limiting beliefs of what happened. We need to actually create a different destination. So that's the opportunity there. So we have to find what these opportunities are. And this, I also call them the deeper truth, really, because it's, yes, these things happen, but actually there's a wise voice inside all of us. And some people call it the higher self, some people call it self energy, some people that are religious might say God, you know, whatever. There's that energy inside of us that actually knows the deeper truth, you know, knows that it's much wiser than our ego. And so we have to access that part to write these opportunities down. And these are going to be our guiding light. They're going to serve as a kind of compass to help us go in the direction we want to go. And then there's all kinds of other hypnotherapy sessions we can do to do with, like, as I was mentioning before, modeling the behavior and the state of mind that you want to feel, which a lot of the time is basically staying in the present, enjoying what you're doing, really expressing it, whatever it is that you're trying to express, whether it's a message or a song or a podcast episode, whatever it is. Um, and then also, there's other exercises as well. But some of them have to do with NLP, neuro linguistic programming. There's all kinds of different things we can do to, for example, come back into to ourselves when we make mistakes during a performance. Not getting completely sidetracked by a mistake. It all depends on the client, what it is that is. And then another one as well is, positive mental rehearsal, like I mentioned before. That's a powerful one, but we want to do that at the end. We don't want to do that from the beginning, because first we need to look at the untagging the negative conditioning. And we can use also some trauma work to do with that. There's various techniques. But then once that's dealt with, then we can look at what we do in the future. From the past, we come to the present.
Understandable. Let me ask you maybe a question that's off the wall, but maybe one that you've heard times before. Why do you think it's so difficult for people to approach someone of the opposite sex if they find them attractive? Because I think that is something that at least a lot of guys, like I know some women say like that's what they want. They want a guy who's assertive and can go up and talk to them. But I know most guys are like, that is like so difficult to actually do in real life. Why do you think that's so hard for human beings to do, of either sex, I think?
I mean, it's simple. It's a fear of rejection.
Right. But if I get rejected, okay, I'll probably never see this person again. Like, it doesn't really matter. I logically understand that, but I definitely have that hesitation, of course, that I think is just inbuilt.
Well, it depends what you think about yourself and what and the meaning you give to this interaction. So if the meaning you give to the interaction, let's say you go up to a girl or a guy and you say something and they laugh at you or they ignore you or they say no thank you, whatever it may be, right? They don't say yes, basically. They say no. Okay, well now it's all about what the meaning is that you attach to this event, the story you tell yourself. If you tell yourself a story such as, oh, okay, great, now I'm not going to waste my time with this person, that she's obviously not in my tribe, and I'm going to find someone who is in my tribe. So that's you give the event a positive spin or a helpful meaning. How do you think you're going to feel? Probably better than someone who goes, oh my God, this means that I'm not good enough, that I'm really not attractive. And, oh, this also means that it's never going to happen for me. I'm never going to have a relationship. So you jump to conclusions. Oh, they probably think that I'm really ugly. You mind read. These are ways in which you are going to make yourself miserable. But the event is always the same. It's just the meaning, the story.
That's after the fact, which I think that's really helpful, that you don't assign any significance to it. I've heard that like rejection is just an opinion. That's one person's opinion. So everyone has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's valid. How would you counsel someone to get over that initial hesitation to actually commit?
Well, I think first of all, you need to stay calm, right? So taking deep breaths, absolutely important. The other thing that I would say, this is a trick that I learned through improv, is you need to stay in the present, right? So you need to take a deep breath every time, so let's say I'm doing it with you and I don't know you. I get ready. So I get ready by taking deep breaths the way that I described before. Once I'm feeling that my breath is actually pretty slow. Then there's a bunch of other things I could do. For example, I could use imagination. So I could imagine. One of the things that really helps with performance, because it's kind of like a performance, like you're putting yourself in there. So one thing I can do I do is to take some time, if if I'm really nervous, take some time to imagine that every time I breathe in, um, a calming energy is coming from the bottom of my feet, from the middle of the earth, is coming in here on over my head, and then as I breathe out, the tension goes the opposite direction. So I'm visualizing calm coming in one direction and tension going down in another direction. I then, once I'm calm physically, so I need to be not have too many, shallow breathing, important to breathe really deeply, feeling calm. Then one of the things that I sometimes do is imagine that I have a sphere around me. So this is like kind of a sphere that is as large as you can kind of put your hand, if you extend your arms,
Hmm.
imagine that there's a sphere around you that's like transparent but also really strong. It's like it's a sphere that protects you. It's obviously like this is not like a reality, but your brain responds to images and emotions, right? It's we are very much responding to these things more than rationality. Like rationality is all about prefrontal cortex stuff. It's the new kid on the block. Emotions are always going to be stronger. So imagine that there's this beautiful sphere. It's transparent, but it's strong, and no negative energy can come in. Only positive energy, only the ones that you open the door to, that you say, okay, you can come in. That's that. So you can feel safe, right? Safety
Mm.
is really important. And now, I am talking extremes, okay? I'm not saying you have to do all of this if you're just a bit nervous, but if you're like super, super nervous, this is something you can do. And then, once you're ready, you take a deep breath, you go towards the person, look at them in the eyes. So don't look at the floor, don't look on the right, on the left, up there. No, just look at the person in the eyes. As you breathe out, you walk into them. And then you breathe in again. And then once you breathe out, you talk to them. And it might feel super slow, but actually it's going to really help you to stay calm and to also engage them. And then in that moment, simply say something that you've noticed in the present, right? It could be something about their appearance, something about the place you're in, but connect to something that they also can connect to. So, it doesn't really matter what it is, but if I look at you and the first thing I notice is that hat, the hat that you're wearing, and I go, oh, I notice you wear a hat, but I can't quite read what it says. So can you show me? I, I haven't thought about this before. I'm just looking at you right now, and I've noticed
Hmm.
that hat with the writing, So I'm just basically just relating to you in the present moment, staying in the now.
And do you notice
Okay.
that people get better with more practice? Because it sounded like you performed a lot, but it wasn't getting better necessarily, maybe even getting worse.
Well, it's because it depends how you approach it. So if you prepare in a positive way and you do all of these things, positive mental rehearsal, etc., then every performance is going to be better. But if you don't do any of that and you just simply repeat your negative rumination, your negative mental rehearsal, you basically having a terrible experience every time, then of course that's going to be reinforced.
Mm. So, are you a big proponent then of people playing positive situations out in their brain?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Interesting. So, maybe to transition a little, talk to me about the work that you do to try to help creative types monetize their business or monetize their creativity. Uh, as you stated previously, you were a musician and it wasn't sort of paying the bills, if you will. So, maybe just give me an understanding of what that looks like for creative people and why they find it so hard to turn creativity into a profitable lifestyle.
Well, it's about seeing what you do as useful and not just something that um, I'm trying to say here. It's like, okay, so one of the things that can happen, or at least one thing that definitely happened to me and that I've seen other artists go through, um, is feeling kind of yucky about promoting yourself.
Yep.
Seeing it as oh God, this is cringe worthy, and especially if you're European, because in Europe there's less, I think Americans are more open to that kind of thing.
I would say that's definitely true.
Yeah. But for Europeans, it can be tricky. You just kind of feel dirty. Like someone else would be better if someone else does the promotion.
I mean, I feel that way.
Um,
Like, I feel
right.
hesitant to really promote myself and our podcast because, as stated, it feels a little yucky. It's like, get off your high horse. Like, who's to say that this person needs to take their time to listen to what you have to say? Like, who are you essentially to demand these other people's attention? Even when internally
So,
I feel like I do have something to say.
yeah. Well, the thing is that you're not demanding anything. You're just putting yourself out there and you're saying, this is what I've got to offer, right? Imagine that instead of art, it was food. And you were like, okay, you know what? I've got this really cool recipe that I'd love to share. And I'm sure it's not for everyone. Maybe it's a special recipe that's full of dairy. So there's people that are dairy free that they're not going to like it. But you know what? There's plenty of people that probably really going to like it. Anyway, I don't know. I really like it, so I'm going to share it, right?
Mm,
So the idea is I am just sharing something that I value, right? Because it
mm.
does something for me. I'm not saying that it's for everybody. I'm not going to shove it down everybody's throat. I'm just saying, hey, if you happen to like this particular thing, here it is. Have it. You can have it. So you need to relate positively to whatever it is you're selling, you know, and selling being not the dirty word, but more
Yep.
like if you believe in the product, whatever the product may be, if you believe in it, sincerely believe it, so you think, oh, you know what, this song is actually really good. Every time I listen to this song, my own song, I love it. Amazing. I want to dance, or it makes me feel sad but longing, and oh, it opens something in me. Whatever it is, the song or the message that you are talking about in a podcast, for example, you need to be enthusiastic about it, because if you're not, then why would anyone care?
Do you find that creative type people they believe that their work is valuable, but maybe they question how good it is? Because it's kind of like, why would someone listen to my podcast? There's 5,000 podcasts, people who have bigger guests and they have bigger sponsors and better video production. Do you see a lot of creative types questioning that they're good enough, essentially?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we need to remember is that we're not particularly original. Like, no one is saying something new, really, but it's the way you say it. It's
Mm,
like, yes, we can all, you and me can, again, to go back to the analogy of the food, we might have lasagna, and you do lasagna your way, I do lasagna my way, and there's someone over there that loves my lasagna more than yours, just because they like my way. But we both do lasagna, it's just it's not an objective thing, it's more like subjective response, because art is subjective. It's all
mm.
about that. So I think, yeah.
How do you coach people then to monetize that? Because I think art seems like a difficult thing to monetize. If you told me your business plan is I'm going to be an artist, I'd be like, ugh, it's a tricky one.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, there are people that would be even more specialized in this kind of thing, which is like probably business coaches. But in my case, what I do, in any kind of coaching is not the same as mentoring, and it's not the same as consulting.
Mm,
Because it's not me telling you what to do. Okay, so if you want that, then you go and see a consultant or a mentor.
hmm
In my case, so it's more about coaching. It's asking, the right kind of questions. So it's about reflection and taking responsibility for taking action and looking at how to, identify obstacles and learn how to overcome these obstacles. So the coaching sessions are, my ones anyway, they follow a pattern. So first of all, I would ask you what your goal is. So in this case, it's like, oh, monetizing my art, but what does that actually mean? Like in reality, what are we talking about? Because monetizing my art is very vague. Does it mean that you want, I don't know, 10,000 downloads? Does it mean that you want to have a concert in a specific place? Uh, does it mean that you want to make this amount of money? First of all, we got to understand what the goal actually is and make sure that the goal is realistic, obtainable. It's a smart goal. It's got a time frame, and then once we've done that, then we look at what you have already done to get this goal going. And then we talk about what the obstacles are or have been or maybe, and we brainstorm ways to overcome these obstacles. Then we talk about possible actions, different possibilities of what you could do. We go through all of them, and then we get to one that feels like the most exciting or doable, or the one that really feels right to you. And then once that's done, then we look at what action can you take now to go towards that direction, in that direction. And then basically we agree on that, and then it's like, okay, this is the homework, and then you go and do your homework and you come back, and then we go through how it went, what worked, what didn't work, etc.
I mean, I know you said you're not a business coach, but that is quite legitimate business sense to kind of identify the goal. Start with the goal in mind, if you will. I was kind of imagining it would be a lot more self-belief and positivity around their level of art, that it has value, and that, as you stated, it's an opinion of someone if they like it or don't like it. But it does sound like you're providing pretty legit business thought process.
That's part of it, because it's part of the obstacles. What you're talking about is part of the obstacles. If you have low self-esteem and you think, oh God, I can never do this because I just don't have the skills, then we have to look at that. That's an obstacle, and we need to look at how to resolve that, right? And then we go into more maybe therapeutic territory, but that's part of the process.
Because I think that's a difference between someone in the business world and someone in the creative world. I think creatives are much more likely to think that what they're doing is not good enough, where actually it's sort of the opposite, unfortunately, in the business world, where people think that they're better than they actually are. They have like way more confidence in what they're giving away and selling than they actually should. Yeah. That's the best product on the market. You're like, it's legitimately not. And I deal with I deal with all these products in the market, and it's not, but they're super confident. So how do you get like the creatives types to sort of believe, like, hey, again, this, like, you have to believe in your art? Because I imagine so many people just never actually publish something because they're just like, people aren't going to like this. Even me, I felt this with this podcast. Like right when we put it out, I'm like, I don't know if like people are going to like this, but then I just kind of turn the page and say, well, I don't care if somebody doesn't like it. Like, no disrespect, but they're not serving me anyways in my life, like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if doubt is pretty normal. Everybody's got it. And if you don't have doubt, the people that have doubts usually are the people that are actually the smartest, because like you said, because it's about awareness, it's about self-awareness. But it depends whether the self-esteem, where the self-esteem comes from, where the self-esteem problem comes from, because sometimes it comes from, again, childhood experiences where their caregiver or their parent or school teacher, whatever, something happened to basically convince them that, oh, I am not actually that good, I'm not competent. Or the other, there could be that scenario that we were discussing before. It's where, you do something good and then you worry that, oh, you need to continue to do that to get approval. So it's normal to want approval. Everybody wants approval. It's not a sin, but it's when your self-esteem depends on the approval. That's when there's a problem, right? So it needs to then change from outcome-based to process-based progress. So basically, instead of thinking always about the outcome, oh, it needs to be perfect. Oh, this amount of people need to love it, otherwise it means I'm a failure. No. You gotta look at, can you make this intrinsically motivated? Can you be intrinsically motivated? Like, you're doing your podcast not because of the downloads. You're doing the podcast because you want to do it, because you love the process, right? You're having fun, and then the outcome is a plus. It's something on top, the cherry on top. So so the answer is kind of complicated because it depends, first of all, where the issue comes from. If it's low self-esteem, then we got to look into the therapeutic world to make it to change that. But if instead it's simply a problem of, oh, I'm too fixated on perfectionism and the outcome, then we might have to get more to be more intrinsically motivated and really enjoy the process.
I think you hit on something, that you have to do it because you love it. And I sort of tell people, like, assume that no one will care. Like, make the assumption that no one is going to care and you're still going to be willing to do it. Now, that said, you have that thing in the back of your brain that goes, ooh, well, like, if we're not getting the listens, or like, gosh, this guy has 500,000 views on his video. And then you almost start to get jealous sometimes. You're like, I'm just as good as him, and it takes you out of that internal motivation at some capacity, that the reason why you started. So the phrase I love is, remember why you started. And you didn't start thinking, oh, I'm going to become a billionaire off of this. You started because you love it. And I think that probably you could attest that there is a unique thing that happens once it goes from my art to my business, where maybe it's a little bit harder to love, right? Because you're like, well, this is my work now. And it's not just something that I used to be doing for fun. Now it's not necessarily fun anymore. It's a job.
Well, yes. I mean, okay, there's a bunch of things that I'd like to say about this. So, okay, so first of all, first of all, you shouldn't compare yourself to anyone else. If you're gonna use comparisons, compare yourself to yourself yesterday. Okay, so if you want to compare, just compare to yourself, but don't compare. It's just a recipe for misery.
One of my favorite quotes is that comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, and that's so true,
Yeah. And also, it's just ridiculous. It's like, you don't see a dog going, or a cow going, oh, look at that other cow. Oh, it's got more spots than me. Oh, God, well, what does that mean? Like, the cow doesn't care. It's just a cow. Like, he doesn't think about these things. And and that's part of you being human, a part of being human that's not so great. There's a capacity to just being overthinking and overanalyzing, right? So that's one thing. The other thing, the other two things are, in any business, whether it's connected to the arts or not, there's gonna be times you fail, right? Meaning you're not getting the result that you want. So what do you do with that? Well, if you are not in the growth mindset, if you're thinking in the fixed mindset, then you're going to think, oh, that's because I'm not good enough. Therefore, this is who I am. You identify with the result. It's like, I am only worth something if the result is 100% what I wanted it to be. But the thing is, you're setting yourself up for misery again and more failure, because you're not learning from the experience at all. Instead, you should go, okay, so failure is feedback. What does it, it's just basically it's data. It's telling me that this particular action I took didn't result in the outcome I wanted. So what do I need to do? I might have to change A, B, C, and D, and then you go do A, B, C, D, and you change those things and you do it again. And did it work? Yes or no? So you gotta just be very pragmatic, right? And learn from the experience. And then the last thing I want to say is about the thing you mentioned about, not really liking your work. Like your work has changed now because it's not a hobby anymore. You're doing it for money. Well, it is true that I finished my water. It is true that there's a difference. If you, for example, you're a singer-songwriter and you're writing songs for your own enjoyment and you don't really care what other people think because this is what you love and you want to share it, etc. But if you're doing it for money, yes, it's going to be different. Like there might be conditions that you need to think about, such as what's trending, like you still need to be authentic because otherwise, unless you're doing a genre piece in which you're like, well, this is the genre that's working now, so then I have to do this. There's gonna be things you're not gonna like, okay? But that's what I call the shit sandwich. Everybody's got to eat it. Like you can't have everything, right? Like in my business as a hypnotherapist, I don't like particularly marketing. I hate it actually, but you know what? It's gotta be done because if I don't do it, then no one's gonna find me, and then I don't have a job, and then I can't help anybody.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't help anyone if they don't know about you. So, in order to help as many people as you want, you do have to advertise yourself. Yeah. And you said a couple of things that I'll just kind of go on and one of which was observing what's happening as opposed to judging it. I'm reading this book, The Inner Game of Tennis, and that's one of the biggest things that he says is, you're playing someone in tennis and you hit a ball out of bounds. You judge it as bad, but the other player judges it as good, right? And then the line judge literally just makes a decision, in or out. He doesn't care if it's in or out. So your impression of it put the value on it. So he says, don't judge it as good or bad. Just observe. Just say, oh, that went out. Oh, like, I used a little bit more of my wrist on that one. Oh, I'm understanding a little bit more about how my body works and the mechanisms there. So instead of thinking it's good or bad, it just was what it was so that you can go out and make changes. And I think that, as stated, owning a business changes things as a creative person or as someone who's just, involved in it. And you gotta, as you said, eat some shit sandwiches sometimes. We're not always gonna love it. That's why one of the things that I've heard recently is put a timeline on whatever you're doing. Like whether you're like, I'm gonna produce music, you go, I'm gonna produce music for the next 3 years and I'm not gonna quit. Like I refuse to let myself quit until I put out 5 albums. And then after I put out my 5 albums, then I'll decide if I want to quit. But I thought that was a really helpful thing. I think I was listening to a podcaster and he said, I'm not going to let myself quit until I have 300 episodes. And if it doesn't work after 300, then okay, that is what it is. And I love that.
Yeah, I agree.
So one last question and then we can take it home. But I'm not a person who's ever had a lot of success meditating. I know that's something that I've read that you take a lot of stock in. Even some of the things you said here were really just, I think, breathing and meditation techniques. What advice would you give to me about meditating if it's something that I wanted to pull into my daily life, and how would I apply it?
Well, so first of all, we've got to understand what meditation is and isn't. There's a lot of misunderstanding, I think. I myself thought the same thing. I thought, oh my God, like the first time I meditated, it was awful. I started seeing all these horrible things in my mind and like violence, awful stuff. I was like, what? I don't want, go away. I don't want to see this. So I thought that that, meditation means that you are like suddenly not thinking anything. And no, that's not what it is. So what it is, at least in terms of, there's different kinds, but let's talk about mindfulness meditation, which is the one that a lot of people know about. And so the idea with mindfulness meditation is that you are going to have images, thoughts, all kinds of stuff coming into your awareness. The job here is to notice them, observe them, label, let them go. So it's like you said, observer. You're the observer. So you may be, one of my favorite ones is to just take 10 minutes. And I actually use something called Insight Timer. It's like an app, a free app. And the cool thing about it is that it's got a bell that goes off, and you can tell it to go off whenever you want. Say that, every minute. The one I use is every minute. So I take my time, I close my eyes and sitting with my feet flat on the floor, my hands by my side, standing up straight. And then, sorry, not standing, but sitting straight. And then, close my eyes and I start noticing my breath. Okay, just noticing the breath. Then, at some point, what will happen is that a thought will pass and we'll start going, oh, have you thought about this? Right? And a lot of the times, at the beginning especially, you won't notice it. You just get hooked by the thought and you go over there thinking about this rabbit hole, whatever. Then the bell goes ding, and that reminds you, oh, I'm not thinking about my breath anymore. Okay, back to the present. Okay, back to the present. And then again, another thought, do comes in. And this will happen a million times. But every time this happens, before the bell rings, so it is a huge, okay, every time it happens after the bell rings, great. You have been reminded. So then you go back to your breath, back to the present, right? Observing. But this will happen a lot of the times. And then at some point, you start noticing it before the bell comes. You'll be like, I'm thinking. And you label it, thinking. Oh, I was thinking. Okay, back to the breath. Okay, back to the breath. And then again, maybe you notice it just before the bell. It's like, basically you're learning, you are training your attention to go where you want it to go, not where it wants to go. But the mind will come up with all sorts of thoughts. It's just what the mind does. That's normal. It'll keep on happening, except eventually, after a long, long time, you probably have moments where you have less thoughts, just because you have become more present in the moment, just observing, being kind of like an awareness. So imagining, like the awareness is like a sky, the thoughts are like clouds. Sometimes they're fluffy, nice clouds, sometimes they're dark clouds, sometimes there's no clouds. Does that make sense?
So you're just trying to observe essentially those thoughts coming across your brain.
Yeah. You're the awareness that is observing.
And yeah, I know you're a fan of Eckhart Tolle, and that was one of the things I read from him, where he's like, you're having these thoughts, but you are not the voice in your head.
The thoughts.
Like,
yeah.
And I can prove it because you can like observe those thoughts from above essentially and go, well, why am I having those thoughts? So he's like, so they can't be you because you can step outside of them. That kind of like blew my brain. I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. But in essence, meditation is you're just trying to listen and watch what that voice is saying and try to, are you attempting to like quiet it, or are you just watching whatever happens?
No. You're not changing anything, and you're not stopping anything from changing. You're just observing what is coming in and out of your awareness. That's it.
And what do you feel like you've gained from doing that process?
The biggest thing is that now, not always, but often, I'm actually able to spot anxious thoughts, right? So I have much less anxiety because like the anxious thoughts come, and then I go, oh, that's an anxious thought. I don't identify with it anymore and go crazy. Oh my God, this terrible thing will happen. No, I don't believe it. I just see it. So it's not me. I'm not identified with it anymore. It's more like I observe it from the self. I am with it, but I am not it.
Do you think that it allows, I know you talked about your fears not being rational, but do you think it allows you to be more rational? Because if you have a fear come up, you go, well, that's not valuable to think about that thing in that way.
Well, not exactly, because you're not pushing it away. You are you are with it. So that's different. You know, you are unblended. So if you look at it from like a point of view of blended and unblended, it's like you're blended if you are the fear and you're freaking out. Okay, you are unblended if you can see, experience it, be with it, but not in a judgmental kind of way. Not like, oh no, I shouldn't feel this fear, but more like, oh, I'm experiencing fear right now. You know, but you're not in it.
You can sort of separate and say, I get it, I'm afraid, but not necessarily you can make yourself not afraid.
No, you have to accept, radical acceptance of what is, and with compassion, always with compassion and non-judgment and, you know, kindness. It's like, okay, I'm feeling, there's a part of me is feeling really scared. I can be a beautiful, you know, a good parent to that part, because often it's a younger part of me.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap, and showing yourself some compassion. So where can people find you and catch up with all the things that you do, potentially get some help, learn about your music, your coaching, your hypnotherapy, your variety of things you do for people?
Yeah, so I've got two websites. One has got to do with coaching, hypnotherapy, all of that, and that's elisadinapoli.com. And then for my music, and I also teach music as well, but for my music, my albums and all of that, probably the best is to go to my other site, which is Elisa Vulpes. So it's ELYSSA, and then Vulpes is VULPES.com. And that's where all my music is.
We'll link all those in our description here. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to enjoy my Friday evening from Worlds Apart.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, thank you.